Right, recording, so don't swear, because I know what you're like with your terrible language, Rosie.
Oh, I promise I'll watch out. I'll be really careful.
So, right, I was going to, this is part of our Get to Know series that comes the first Friday of every month from now on the ICANN pages. Last month we got to know the lovely Debbie Luckin, and this month we are getting to know Rosee Riggs. So, Rosie, tell us who you are, tell us what you do, and we need to know all about your specialities and your projects. Go on.
Well, thank you so much, Freya, for inviting me. It's really exciting. This is the first time I've ever been live on Facebook, really. So it's quite an adventure.
Oh, wow.
I know. So, yeah, who am I? I'm a British person living in Austria, just where the Alps start, about 100 kilometers south of Vienna. And for 10 years, I've been studying canine behavior and working as a behaviorist. I started my journey with Sheila Harper and Winnie Berman. And Sheila Harper Education is a founder member of ICANN as well.
Yeah, lovely Sheila, yeah.
Yes, and so I did the IPACS 1 and 2 with her, and that's a very observation-based way of working with dogs. And then, yeah, a few years ago, I joined the ISCP family, did the diploma there. And I'm really proud to say that with a colleague of mine, Patrizia Bistron, we worked together on ISCP Austria. It's a sort of dream of ours to be, as we're quite well placed in the center of Europe here on the continent, for countries around where there are also students like Hungary and Slovenia and Slovakia. So to have a sort of meeting place here. And to get
Do you have a lot of students coming then from all the different countries?
Well, we did actually, we got started a few years ago, and I remember you greeted us on a video there. And our idea was actually to really make it a very personal thing where people could come and visit us. That hasn't been possible, of course, due to COVID. But what I would like to plan soon is an online meeting, which might actually bring more people together and see how we can support each other, because obviously there are people, lots of people working there in shelters and rescues, and some of their challenges are the same, but some of them are also very different, and very different welfare laws and stuff like that. So that's one of my dreams, to really be a center for that.
Oh,
and
wow.
Just, the latest qualification I did was with Julie Naismith.
Yeah, this is what you've come to talk to us about, isn't it?
Separation Anxiety Pro Trainer. Well, that's one part of my business now. That's my online part. But obviously locally, I do some more hands-on sort of behavioral work as well.
And this is with dogs, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it with any other animals, or are you specifically concentrating on dogs right now?
Concentrate on dogs, yeah. No, I love it actually, that through ICANN, I really learned a lot about other animals. I mean, I used to have more when I was younger to do with horses as well. I think amazing animals, but I've learned a lot through being in touch with ICANN about the needs of rabbits and rodents. In fact, there was an Austrian woman who wrote a marvelous series which we could look at perhaps again on the needs of different rodents and rabbits and stuff. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's nice actually. There are not that many cross-network places, are there, that we can sort of look in on the different types of animals and like learn about different animal behaviour, because a lot of them are very species specific, aren't they? Yeah. But whereas ICANN is all the companion animals. So that's one of the things I find working, is you learn something new all the time here, don't you?
Yeah, you really do.
So, right, I'm just looking at these questions that Ruby set for us. So when you're working with the dogs with your separation anxiety, how do you meet their needs? How do you go about making sure that they are, that they're comfortable and happy with everything that's going on?
Well, what we do is we, of course, we have a meetup online, because I have a holistic training. I do look into all the sort of stress factors that might be around the dog and the sort of social situation and what the daily routine is and what their health is like, stuff like that. And then I do assessment to find out when exactly they are getting worried about eating, because of course separation anxiety is a real phobia, a fear issue. So we have to make sure that dogs on our watch are not going through further fear episodes.
And what sort of things would you be expecting if a dog had separation anxiety? What sort of things would you be looking out for? Obviously, they would be worried, you know, they might be barking, that kind of thing. What sort of things do you?
Well, sometimes it's quite obvious because, there's that dreaded note from the neighbors saying, do you know that your dog is howling and barking all day? And or you come home to a lot of destruction. But sometimes it's not so obvious. You know, dogs will maybe whine and drool, pace around. Recently, a trainer friend of mine in Austria told me about a case. They had a client who, they were working with their dog sort of for various reasons, and for a reason which had nothing to do with the dogs, these people set up a camera in their house. And for the very first time, they realized, they had never realized this before, that when they went to work for 8 hours a day, which is long, this dog was pacing around the same path, around the sitting room, up the stairs, around the landing, and all the way back down again for 8 hours without stopping. So.
And I guess because they're not there, they just don't know, do they? Unless, you know.
Yeah, and John Bradshaw did a big study years ago. He talks about that in his book, In Defense of Dogs. And he said that he estimates that roughly 1 in 5 dogs suffer from separation anxiety.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. And it's often really undiscovered, which is terrible. I mean, this dog would not lie down. The dog would not drink anything in that time. And that's the main thing that we're looking for. It's behaviors which take place when somebody's out and which don't stop. Because fear behaviors, you know, a dog might whine for a few minutes and then just sort of go to sleep because, okay, no dog's enthusiastic when you leave the house, perhaps, but they would just sort of sleep then, and they don't have a fear, a terror of being left alone.
I suppose because with dogs, if you think about it, they've for thousands and thousands of years they've been bred to want to be around humans, haven't they? And they've, you know, they've domesticated into this little creature that wants to be with us, and now suddenly we go to work. You know.
Yeah, definitely. And John Bradshaw said that it is a sort of, you know, side effect of breeding dogs to want to be with us and to be very dependent on us. But there are other things. Some dogs seem to be genetically hardwired for it. Some dogs have had bad experiences at home, or they just simply haven't got used to being at home.
So what sort of advice would you give people to get their dogs used to being at home? What sort of what would help, do you think?
Well, so what we do then
to prevent separation anxiety in the first place?
With puppies, yeah, well, it's really good to try and do a little bit of getting your dog used to being alone. It's as important in a way as toilet training. Obviously, puppies need to have you around, so it's not like you're going to practice being away a lot, but you can kind of, like, you know, that game that we play with kids when you kind of just move behind the door and come back, just for those little moments that teaches the puppy about object permanence, that you don't cease to exist because you walk away. Getting your dog, your puppy sort of comfortable and just sort of moving into the other room and coming back and just building it really naturally into everyday life. So what's really difficult also to COVID times is when dogs get used to you being around all the time, and then suddenly, oh, I've got to go back to work next week, and I'm out of the house for 4 or 5 hours at a time. And that, of course, those sudden changes are also.
And of course, a lot of these dogs have never known any different either, have they? Because they've been brought during lockdown.
Yeah, and there are all sorts of things that. I mean, there's one aspect is the isolation distress, is that when dogs are afraid to be on their own, but they are happy to be with somebody they know, like a dog sitter or a family member. But there are dogs who will only stay with one person. And I had experience of this with my greyhound, whom I adopted in 2012 from the racecourse in Ireland. And he, of course, he had never lived in a flat before, or a house, and nobody really take care of him. He lived in a kennel or whatever, and anyway, for whatever reasons, we'll never be able to look into their heads, but he was absolutely hyper attached to me. And even with people that he knew, he would go absolutely berserk. And that is a great burden, emotional burden for owners, because I was lucky. He would stay in the car. So I had to arrange all my sort of teaching and my plans to.
So of course, that's not even really an option at the moment either, especially in the UK when A, the weather's heating up, and B, there's so many dog thefts and things as well. It's difficult, isn't it?
It is. I was really in Austria. That's at the moment, thank heavens, not such a terrible issue, but it was the winter of 2012 was so cold. There was really high snow, and he was wrapped up in two great a greyhound coat and a deerhound coat over the top, in my van, and so every couple of hours you'd have to go and take him for a walk. But he was very exhausted also, so he slept there. I was lucky, but if you don't have that, then you are looking. You need to help the dog with some medication, because they just need that help to cope.
So with medication, what sort of things would we be looking at? Is it say the pet remedy things, like the natural remedies, or would you be looking at more like allopathic stuff from the vet?
Yeah, I work together with a vet behaviorist, because usually that kind of fear, it's so extreme that most people find that herbal remedies and stuff like that are not really enough. And I was able to help my greyhound with pharmacognosy, but it was only because I was privileged enough to organize my working life so that I can accommodate this.
Yeah, of course, a lot of people don't, do they?
No, it's really quite a challenge. So there are lots of things. Sometimes, of course, though, it has to be said that dogs do things at home which are not, which may look like separation anxiety, but they're not. There are other issues. So one of the things that we do in the assessment phase is look at, are they really doing this because they're afraid or not? One of the sort of classics, for example, is that when the people go out, the dog will pee on the floor, and that can be separation anxiety, but often it's because the dog has been punished for peeing in the house.
So they wait till the owner goes out, I suppose.
Yeah, so they feel safer doing it when the people are not looking. So you have to kind of, that's why it was actually a 3-month really intense course with Julie. He's a great teacher, and it's a fascinating subject and quite a complex subject. And
there's quite a lot to it, isn't there? Yeah.
There is, yeah. And also generally about fear issues. I learned a lot.
I'm just going to have a quick check for comments while we're here. So we've got Dawn. She says, hi ladies, hi everyone, good to see you both. Emma Mayhew says, hi Rosie, good to see you.
Hi,
Kate Thornton says, hi ladies, very worrying about separation anxiety with lockdown coming to an end. Stuart Harris says hi, and he's looking forward to hearing us speak. Dawn says, one of my dogs used to have significant separation concerns. She improved hugely, but since lockdown in the UK, she struggled again. So I'm making sure I've started to reintroduce mini separations, and she's doing well. So is that something you advise, mini separations?
Well, what we do is we set up cameras, and during our assessment, we work out what is a baseline. Basically, what we're trying to do is actually rehearse with the dog what they can do. You know, lots of successes. I can stay for a few seconds. We don't want them to go over threshold into a fear episode. So, you know, some dogs, you can't get off the sofa, you can't even stand up, you can't get to the door. So we practice then in tiny steps, breaking that down into baby steps, just going to the door, putting your hand on the handle, or just opening and shutting it. And once you know where that baseline, then you sort of practice very gently, step by step, with every day. So when I have a client, I'm working out training plans every day, really, because we're deciding, you know, can the dog do a little more, or should we drop back and practice more successes? But yes, you definitely do your dogs a favor to start early.
And I guess as well, I mean, it's it doesn't go like in a linear progression from anxiety to no anxiety. You'll have sort of peaks and troughs, I guess, wouldn't you, on the way?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. You have to, you know, sometimes you can get sort of up to 15 minutes and then suddenly the dog, there's all those sort of stress things that come with everyday life, and sometimes there are, but on the whole, I mean, nobody does their best time jogging every day, for example. You get to do your best time all the time.
Yeah.
But on the whole, it is a very successful way of helping dogs. Yeah.
And of course, it's not an overnight thing either, is it? It's something you have to keep working on.
Yeah, it is, and that's also, and it's also like sort of interesting thing to try and find out what is the easiest for the dog. How are we going to make this as easy as possible? Some dogs, for example, do better in the morning or the evening. Some dogs do better if you leave by the back door and not by the front door. So we're trying to work out as well what's the easiest scenario that we can work on. Yeah.
And would you recommend things like going for a walk before leaving and that kind of thing, so that they're nice and settled, or you know, or maybe eating before you go, that sort of thing? Would that make a difference, do you think?
That does make a difference. Sometimes, occasionally, a dog that if you take them for a walk, they're too hyper beforehand. But for the most part, yes, you know, going for sniffy walks beforehand, doing some enrichment, particularly if there's an element of frustration. There's dogs expressing frustration at not being able to go with their people. It looks similar often, and they also need to get used to this frustration, because frustration is also not a nice emotion.
No.
Those dogs are helped a lot by, you know, going for a walk, doing some enrichment, and
yeah. Because enrichment is amazing for so many things as well, isn't it? So, but to get your dog into a mental state, like where they can cope with things better, enrichment I find is absolutely wonderful. Again, though, it depends on the dog as well, because you might find yourself frustrating the dog, mightn't you? So
yeah, and also you don't want to be doing the same sort of thing every day. You know, sometimes go for a sniffy walk, or you might do a little bit of tracking, or whatever suits the dog.
So we have some more comments coming. Emma says she finds with her dogs it's so important to TA. So I suppose that means that to take breaks from them. Dawn says it's very individual for each dog. She supports her dog in multiple ways rather than just leaving the house, which again would be, you know, there's so many things play into it, isn't there? Emma says, sorry, sent too early. So important to talk to your dogs and tell them what you're doing. If I just pop out to the garage, for example, I say, just putting the rubbish out. If I go for a longer period, I say I'm going shopping. I'm convinced this helps them.
It does, yeah, it does. You know, sometimes you just sort of, because the ideal thing really is to try and help the dog disengage emotionally from you. So I always use this, and my clients use it, just sort of saying, you know, I'll be right back. In fact, Julie Naismith's book is called Be Right Back. So just, you know, I'll be right back. And then you might go to the kitchen, get a glass of water and come back. And after a while, the great breakthrough, for example, with my greyhound was the moment he didn't follow me to the toilet one day. Because
Right.
he learned that when I went there, I was back soon. So luckily he was lazy enough to figure out that that wasn't worth it. And after that, they can start to disengage from you emotionally a little bit. You just say, I'll be right back. And then you are. Some dogs, it helps, for example, just to make clear whether they're coming or not. If they have their collar and harness on when they're going out, but they don't have any of that on if you're not, so they can learn to differentiate a little bit. Yeah, definitely. Predictability and telling the dog what you're going to do helps a lot. Yeah, definitely.
See, one thing I always got told is to make something different when you're training them to when you're actually leaving, so it doesn't mess up the training. Does that make sense? So I've always been told to put a plant pot or something like that out, but only when you're actually going, so that they know if the plant pot's not there, then everything's okay and you can carry on your training. Does that?
Well, that's similar, really, but it's probably more practical that if they've got a collar and harness on, you're coming, and if you don't, then you're not. Or or just using a hand signal and saying, just wait here a little while and I'll be right back. But once we've got the exercises so that somebody can get out of the door, then of course we're watching on the camera, so that we're watching for absolute micro behaviors, the tiniest little bit of anxiety that somebody gets back in. And
of course, sometimes the dogs can be getting up and looking around, and they're not necessarily anxious, are they? Because you can't expect that they won't just lay still for 8 hours. They need to, So I suppose it's judging at what point they become anxious as well, which is where you come in.
And also where the clients become absolute experts on reading their dog, and that's one of the things I love about it, is it's absolutely dog-led. The dog is leading this process, and we are trying to facilitate it, and it's very exciting actually. I find it absolutely fascinating, and it's lovely when you see dogs who are able to sleep or just sit and play with something or whatever they want to do.
I imagine
they don't have to sleep all the time, of course not. No.
I mean, it's probably quite rewarding for the owners as well, isn't it? Because they can actually see, like, we got to 2 minutes, we got to 3 minutes, we got to 5 minutes, and they probably have that little dopamine burst themselves, don't they? Every time that when they get a new personal best in.
Absolutely. I mean, it is really moving to see how dedicated people are, because it does take dedication to do this, really regularly and step by step. And it's amazing how wonderful people are. They go and sit in the car and watching their videos, and I mean, it's really great.
I know. I've been telling people to Zoom their dogs so they can sit and have a little Zoom meeting with their dogs while they're sitting in the kitchens and things. But I suppose doing that though, it might actually make the computer to be a cue that you're leaving then as well, mightn't it? Because you'll pop it up and then you'll go. I suppose your dogs look for all these little things, don't they?
It's a really question of what we try and do is actually remove all unnecessary cues, because obviously some dogs get worried if you're picking up your keys or putting on your jacket. And it used to be the case that people would rehearse those things first, kind of like putting on your jacket and taking it off and putting your shoes on. But Julie has taught us, and I think this is a really good way of thinking about it. If you do that, you are basically, you've got the dog on red alert all the time. Is she going? Is she not going? Sort of stuff, because they're not afraid actually of the keys. They're not afraid of the jacket, and they're not afraid of you putting on your shoes. They're afraid of you leaving. So what we try and do is, either maybe you can have your shoes on all the time, have your keys already in the pocket. You may have your coat in the car. If the car is a trigger, you might park your car around the corner, further away.
I hope everyone's paying attention to this, by the way, because this is absolute gold. Thank you so much, Rosie. I know I'm going to be sharing this with some of my clients, actually. Talking of clients, right? If people are watching this and they have a dog with separation anxiety and they want to know how to help that dog, What can they do? I know they can get hold of you. What's the best way of doing that?
Well, that's really kind of you. And actually, I've just got a new page up on my website.
Oh,
Yeah, so I don't know whether somebody can post that in the comments, but
yeah.
this is somewhere where you can book a call with me, because I think it's always good to talk about it beforehand a little bit to see what's involved.
And of course, you work internationally as well, don't you?
Yes, yeah, I do, because that's the great thing about it. It's better to do this online. It's the one thing that I find is better to do online than really in person, because it's not useful to be in the same room as the dog while you're trying to find out how they're coping with their anyway. So I've got this new page on my website yesterday, and you can actually book a call directly.
Okay, what we'll do is we pop links in the comments, and then people will be able to find you for that. And when I put this over onto YouTube, I'll put a link in the comments there as well for you.
That's
Okay.
really cool. Yeah. Or if they can't find an appointment on there, they can also write to me through my website.
Okay. We'll put a link for your website as well then, if that's okay.
So much. Thank you. Yeah.
Excellent.
Really cool.
Right. So yeah, is it cold over there at the moment? It's ever so cold here in the UK.
Well, it got really the last few days it's been 24 degrees here. It was really lovely, and now it's going to plummet. We're going to have a few days where it's really cold, and I hope there's not going to be too much frost, because all the apple trees, all the apricot trees, all the fruit trees are in blossom at the moment, so there won't be too much frost damage. But
yeah. Okay, we've just got a couple more comments. So Pominda Southcott's watching. Hi, Pominda. Kate says, interesting. So you don't really recommend desensitizing triggers, or have I misunderstood that? I do get there might be some uncertainty if you put your coat on or pick your keys up, but if you completely desensitize them, does this not help? Very willing to take on this insight. I think it's I think you'd probably agree. It's not so much about desensitizing as removing the trigger altogether, isn't it?
At first, yeah. In that phase, because that trigger means to the dog, I'm afraid of you leaving. So what we're trying to do is help the dog through several safe absences. And Julie says normally, actually, experience shows that around about 15 to 20 minutes, if the dog can do that well, then you can start reintroducing the cues afterwards. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you don't have to desensitize them at all, because they're not a problem anymore. If you're lucky, you get them for free, as it were. Yeah.
Dawn says, absolutely, it's really great and a real challenge for our dogs and for us too. My girl is a mind reader for cues, closing down the laptop, going to the bathroom. What works for me is to be quick, calm and clear. Thank you so much for this, Rosie. And Kate says, all right, I understand exactly what you're saying. Thank you. Okay.
So I tried that myself, with my greyhound, because I read it in a book. This was about 9 years ago now, and I did this forever, and it didn't help, because because the fear was about something else. And so that really makes sense for me when Julie said, do desensitize those things, but do it later.
Yeah, no, that does make perfect sense, actually, because then you can, I suppose as well, then you can get on with getting the separation training out of the way as well, a little bit faster. So you're not spending weeks desensitizing to keys, etc. first, are you? You're dealing with the actual cause of the problem, I suppose. So yeah. Oh, excellent.
Really, what we're trying to do is to get the dog to feel safe. I can do this. I can do this, and get a lot of, because as you know, fear is really programming the amygdala. It's there, and you don't forget a fear. You don't forget that tigers want to eat us for breakfast, because you can't say, oh, I forgot that, sorry, because you only do that once. So fear, has that function to keep us safe. And what we need is loads and loads of successes. I can do this. Oh, look, she walked to the door. I can do this. She opened the door. I can do this. So that's what we want to concentrate on first.
So what would you say was your biggest tip for dogs for avoiding separation anxiety in the first place?
Well, it's just starting early.
Okay. And what?
building it very naturally into your routine.
Mm-hmm.
But, because as I say, ideally, if the dog can emotionally disengage from you, that is the best way round. One day your dog will be able to be in another room, you will just go into another room, or he will sleep suddenly in another room while you're working. So just to build these little things into every day with the puppies, and to start early, particularly if you have really been at home for a long time, COVID or quarantining or that sort of thing. It's a good idea to start. Yeah.
And of course, my best tip for anybody that does have a dog who already has separation anxiety is to get hold of a separation anxiety specialist, because it'll probably be so easy to make it actually worse rather than better as well, wouldn't it? So you'd need specialist help.
I think so, because it is such an extreme fear issue, because it's an extreme welfare issue, really. And because Julie's also written a brilliant book, Be Right Back, which is lovely, and that's the basis of the method we use. But of course, yeah, I mean, we did a really three months intensive course, loads and loads to learn. So yeah, it is good to have somebody specialized to help you, and also to encourage you along the way, because there will be setbacks, and it's important to, and you need to ask somebody, is that when he's getting nervous, or is that okay, or shall I change some things?
Yeah, I suppose you double up as the coach for the human as well, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of support, ideas, management ideas. How do I make sure that my dog is not left alone? That you have to be really creative. Some people, for example, they have a dog sitter during the week, but they take dogs in themselves the weekend to pay for that, or they have they help each other out with family members or something. You've got to be quite creative to make sure that your dog is not left in fear. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
Because apart from the fact it's so damaging to the training, it's also unethical. I mean, to leave a dog in fear is not something.
And it affects so many things. I mean, it's not just that they're worried for that time, it then affects their health with the stress and, like all the things that come along with that. And, sometimes they have dietary issues, and all sorts of things could happen, can't they? Just from stemming from this separation anxiety.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right, well, it's been absolutely fascinating talking to you. There's so much to learn about separation anxiety. What I'll get you to do is, if I get you to pop your links in the comments for me, right, so that everybody can see them. And then what I'll do is, when I share this video across to YouTube, I'll make sure they're in there as well. But I just wanted you all to know, like, if you have a dog with separation anxiety, do get hold of a specialist like Rosee, or especially Rosee, and don't try and do it on your own, because you can end up sensitizing the dogs rather than helping them. So but it is something that can be helped. Okay, so thank you ever so much, Rosee. It's been really great getting to know you, and we will be back May, the first Friday of May, we'll be back. Okay, and we will have somebody special for you then.
Thank you for the invitation, Freya. It's really, really nice to see you. Thank you so much.
And thank you for letting us be your first live on Facebook.
Yeah, that's so sweet. No, thank you, Freya, and thank you.
Now, was it as scary as you thought it would be?
No, because you're so kind and are such great.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.